Hey everyone, welcome back to the MHP Show. I'm your host, Derek Vickers. Here on the MHP Show, we talk about anything and everything that has to do with mobile home parks, operations, buying deals, putting deals under contract, crazy things that happen, because crazy things do happen in mobile home parks in one way, shape, or form. And so we talk about those things here. And today we have another guest with us today. But before I get into that, I wanted to make a shout for our learn.parkinvestingpro.com. So that's a webinar that we're doing again live on August. I believe it's August 3rd. August 3rd, we're doing that live. Me and Armand Violi, we're teaching people how to find off-market deals and showing you how you can structure deals with no money down. And I know people talk about no money down and things all the time, but I've done that myself. And so I'm going to show you how exactly I did that. And Armand's going to show you exactly how you can find these juicy off-market deals that everyone talks about. So without further ado, I got Mr. Dylan Stewart with me here today. He's a mobile home park extraordinaire. He's an expert in this field, 100%. Welcome to the show, Dylan.
Derek, what's up, man? Excited to be with you and your listeners. And I know about expert. I think all of us don't really know what we're doing. We just try to fix our problems that we make every day. That seems to be a lot of it in the park space, right?
That's a good and valid point. So I will not disagree with you there. But you look sharp, man. Did you just get a haircut?
I did. For the guys who are listening on audio, you got to get to video. I got a nice haircut for you guys. I even put a shirt on, and so I didn't want to scare your audience too much.
Dang, you're looking slick, dude. And I got a hat on today. Usually my hair is slicked back and I'm all shaved up, but I'm with the mobile home park look a little bit today. I'm driving a truck on site, hat on, little scruff, try to do it down a little bit.
You have like a combination of hip hop and business casual. It's kind of good there.
Yeah.
New theme.
Yeah. But yeah, man. So look. So tell us. I always like to start this show, and I love asking people, like, before we get into mobile home parks. So like, I know you're a young guy, but what was your first entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah. So to give a 30,000 foot view. So at the time of this recording, I'm 24, just turned 24 in July. And so I graduated high school in 2017 and, got right into real estate after high school and investing. But before that, my first entrepreneurial endeavor was when I was probably in like fourth grade, growing up around a farm. So I had chickens. So I was selling chicken eggs and, knocking some doors, and that was it. And then that kind of evolved into eventually landscaping and then door-to-door sales, online sales, network marketing, did some health and fitness stuff. And then, after I had such a big vision. And so I knew that I needed something that had the capacity to get me to where I want to go, right? Because a lot of people work hard, right? But you and I know this is, it's not how hard you work, it's how smart you work. And if you're in the wrong vehicle and you don't have enough leverage, then you're not going to be able to create a life that you want, right? So for me, I knew that to create a life of freedom and financial with time and everything, that I wanted to get in real estate. So after I graduated high school in 2017, I got sold on a real estate seminar and, decided to move forward with that. And they taught us outdated wholesaling strategies. And after 2 months of doing that, I said, this isn't working. And so I went to good old YouTube University, free 99, and applied everything, and then did my first deal within 2 months after applying everything they taught me. And so that was fall of 2017, did a few more deals thereafter. And then my prior business partner and I, we started doing out-of-state wholesaling in St. Louis, did 3 dozen plus, single family deals that following year with wholesaling, creative finance, and fix and flips. And then end of 2019, it was just God's good timing. We were selling a single family deal. And this gentleman was like, well, I'm not buying, but I have a mobile home park I'd sell you. So that was a small 12 space park outside of St. Louis. And we didn't know what we were doing, but we knew we wanted to get into some sort of multifamily. So bought that with some friends and family, bought another right across the street. So we had 22 lots there. And then did that for about a year. And then the beginning of 2021, decided to ramp it up and, went from 22 lots for 500 and bought in Texas, Minnesota, Ohio, had Illinois park, and, then just continued to grow from there. And so it's been a lot of learning lessons, a lot of growing pains. And, since then, I bought my business partner out of 6 of the 8 parks, just no longer alignment of values and vision. And so since then, really just been dialing in on operations, bought a few more parks since then. But yeah, it's fun. It's learning lessons every day and trying to figure it out, as we said.
Yeah, it definitely is. I feel like I add new items to my DD list, every few weeks. I'm like, geez, we had to pay $5,000 here for this. Okay, I got to add that to the list now.
Yep.
But you said something interesting, and I wanted to kind of dive in on this a little bit. You mentioned something about leverage, and you were lucky enough to figure out, hey, I need to get in something that's going to leverage my time, and my effort is going to be exponentially leveraged. Because I was in a business to where it was a lot of work to make. I was making good money in that business, the insurance business, but the leverage wasn't there. It was a lot of work for like this much, right? And so I guess what I want you to kind of open up is like, how did you have the know-how or the thinking to be like, okay, like, because when I was that age, I was too busy partying. Like, yeah. I wasn't even.
I was doing some of that too. Don't worry.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So leverage is the ability to focus what you're best on and leverage either other people, other resources, whether if that's energy, whether if that's money, whether if that's debt, but then also leveraging the right vehicle, right? And so if you're doing door-to-door sales, you can only knock on so many doors a day, right? But if you're going and raising $100 million and then you're investing that into multiple businesses to where now you're the capital man, but someone else is running those businesses, that's very high leverage. If you're going and buying $100 million of real estate and you're only, you're using $8 million or $70 million of bank financing, then that's, leverage there. And so I think when, I wanted to get into something bigger, it had to be able to scale as I wanted to scale. And what helped me out with that is also starting with the end in mind. A lot of people, they just go throughout life and they do not say, what do I want to do when I wake up? How often do I want to travel with my family? What does my body want to look like? What do I want to do with impact and with my kids? And how do I want to travel and different things? And so what happens is we run around like chickens with our head cut off. We don't know what we're doing. There's no purpose in anything. And so for me, I said, you know what? I want to work this frequently. I want to make this much money. I want to travel this much. I want, and so as I started to reverse engineer this and start with the end in mind, I said, you know what? This vehicle real estate, I think, will be good for that. And there's so many other vehicles out there. But when you start with the end in mind, then you work your way back. And so for me, as I was working through that process, and this is, now I'm almost 6 years in my real estate endeavor. And so I feel like over the past year, I've really gotten a lot more clarity on this, but it takes time. And so, for those who are trying to look at high leverage opportunities, for one, have that clarity in mind. And the next is look at what you're good at, right? And so for me, I have 4 big pillars that I try to spend as much as my time on as possible in the company. So that is my company vision, my brand and social credibility, strategic relationships, and then team leadership and development, right? There's nothing in there about picking up checks or getting on Rent Manager or, doing due diligence or, dealing with different things. And so when I look at what I'm good at, I know that if I have a vision big enough to support other high-level people, I can bring on team members to oversee marketing, acquisitions, due diligence, financing, investor relations, asset management, construction management, these different things that it's hard to let go of. But because I have the clarity on what I want to create, what I'm good at, I can then emphasize and focus on that as much as possible. And clearly, I'm not there yet, but when I have that clarity with my schedule, then I try to time block as much as possible to focus on those high leverage activities for me, right? Because when I focus on, again, high leverage is not only just in a business and with our time, but it is very high leverage for me to learn leadership, because then as I can invest in my team members and my site managers and my VAs and different things so that they can not only get a job done, but they enjoy it. And then they're developing leaders as well. And so leverage can be, applied to anything.
There's so much to unpack in that answer right there. That's just, and one of the things I wanted to say is that, starting with the end in mind, I think you hear that there's a lot of people and you watch reels on Instagram and people talk about that. It's almost cliche right now, but I'm a total believer in that. You have to build this vision of what you want. And that's why in my course, I actually talk about, like, one of the first things that we do is get someone to like decide what kind of what their vision is and what kind of properties are going to get them to that point. So I think that's super, super important. And I know it seems a little airy fairy, but look, hey, I'm about that stuff. Yep. Right. So my thought on is like, hey, so like what bad is it going to do you? Like,
Yeah.
it's not going to do it. It's not going to do anything terrible for you. It's only going to do good stuff for you. And,
100%.
I just love that, man. And I think our listeners need to heed that advice. And so like decide what you want and then figure that out. And you've obviously done that.
Yeah. Well, and one strategist to expand on that a little bit more, if it's okay, is it's honestly put a price tag to things, right? And, because so often we say, oh, I want $1 million, it's like, okay, well, that's 86,000 a month, right? Oh, I want to make $10 million. Okay, well, 8.6 million, and people throw out these big numbers, but when you reverse it, because I've done this, how many houses do I want to own? How many boats, snowmobiles, RVs, dirt bikes, Airbnb trips, tithing, taking family trips. And when you put a price tag, for me personally, I've had a hard time getting over like 50,000 a month. And that is extravagant. I don't even need that. 50,000 a month is only 600,000 a year, right? So many people, they're like, oh, I need to own $100 million real estate because that's what XYZ person did. It's like, well, do you know what goes into that with team and debt and responsibilities and leadership and all this different things? And so if people just did the math and be like, you know what? $20,000 a month, 240 grand a year, I'd be pretty good. And then it's like you can go and build a life and business off of that. And that's the hardest part that I have to check myself on. I know so many people do as well, is social media. We see what other people are doing, which is great, but that's their goal. And to be honest, maybe they don't even have a goal. They're just doing it because they think everybody else should do it, And so when you also put a price tag to things, you realize that, maybe I only need to own, 100 lots. And in my backyard, it doesn't have to be across the country. It doesn't have to do all this stuff. And so that a price tag helps as well with that clarity.
Yeah. And I think that's, fantastic advice because everybody's got different goals. Maybe, you don't have crazy goals. You don't want boats and jets and things like that. And I'm not saying
that's for us crazy people, right?
Yeah, that's for me. That's for us crazy people, But you do have to understand what you want. I think, Dylan, you just put that. I mean, I don't think I could have said it any better myself. And that's awesome, dude. And one of the things I wanted to talk on here, like, I love how you've really dialed in, like, hey, this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm going to focus on, because I think it's a bad habit that I have personally, because when I was in the insurance business, it was grind every day, like for sales, you're blasting the phones, and I had to do all this myself to build it up. And then when I started building a team, I built it up to 100 people, and then over 100 people actually. And then I was still kind of like, it was hard to pull myself out of some of this stuff. And I still have some of those bad, those traits today, because like you, I'm good at that kind of stuff. Like I can build leaders, like I can really put that vision there. But so I'm curious to know, how did you discipline yourself to like, okay, this is what I'm good at. I'm going to do this and pull myself out of that other day-to-day minutia?
Oh my goodness. It's hard, right? And I think one thing that people have to keep in mind is when you listen to other people's stories, there's a timeline associated with it, right? So for me, this is over the past 6 years, right? And so it's taken time, and it's going to take the next person's time to figure it out as well. But, Brandon Turner, I heard him once say on a podcast, is the amount of equity you give out is in proportion to how big your vision is, right? And so for me, when we started building the portfolio, we were bringing on people, and we gave some equity here to like salespeople and construction people. And we're like, our vision wasn't big enough, right? But if I want to go build $1 billion portfolio, which if I wanted to, I know I could, then, I'm only going to give out a certain amount of equity in proportion to that. So in the same thing is, if your vision isn't big enough, it's going to be hard for you to delegate to the right people, right? So for me, as I have a big vision, and I know very clearly, over the next 10 years, I want to acquire 5,500 lots, going to be about $350 million of real estate. Great. So now when I talk to my team, here's where we're going. And, they can then see themselves in that vision. And then now we know that based on what the end goal is and what the portfolio is, we can start to reverse engineer the type of people we can have in there. Because if it's maybe a little bit larger of a company, then you can have your head of marketing, your head of asset management, your head of acquisition, your head of finance, your head of legal, and different things. And so I think when you have the vision clear, then you can start to reverse engineer. And then for me, it's like, it's hard because it's a difference of not how does something get done, but who can get something done. And so for me, I had to very quickly and I know you experienced this as well, and my growth is nothing compared to yours, but when you grow, you realize that you only have so much time in the day. And so you're going to have to start backfilling that with people. And maybe at first it's a site manager, and then it's an assistant, and then it's a regional manager to do, onboarding and training. And then it's an asset manager. And so you look at things and, you kind of see as you can start filling it in. And there's this book that I have on my desk here that everybody should read called Traction, if they haven't already. Traction by Gino Wickman. And it talks about entrepreneurs need to let go of the vine, right? Because, we're controllers and we're high performers and we're awesome, right? And no one could do something as good as us, right? Because we're so perfect, right? And so what happens is we have a hard time letting go of control. And one thing for me that I realized is that if someone, and again, this is me just regurgitating everything I've learned and a little bit of personal experience in here, right? But, if someone can do something 80% as well as you need to trust them to do it, right? And then also, and I was talking with my team about this on Tuesday when we did our L10, our leadership meetings, that Traction talks about, is, we need to be able to slow down as leaders. And instead of immediately solving the problem for someone, ask them, hey, what do you think we should do about this? And it's really hard when you start asking that question, because let's say you ask a site manager and they don't give you the top-notch answer that you want, but you're starting to get their wheels turning. You're starting to, release some ownership, give them some control. And then you'll realize that, again, as long as you have the clarity of what the outcome needs to be, if someone does it maybe a little bit differently than you, then that's okay, because you're still getting that outcome. But, it's hard as an owner, you have to let go of that control. Say, well, I want it this way, and I, want to do it, and I have to do it all, myself. But one thing I recently learned that I'm continuing to share this with my team is this principle of 80-10-80. So when we want to start something new in the company, that first 10, sorry, I think I said 10-80-10, maybe I said that, but the first 10% of something getting started, we're collaborating on it together. And so that I can give my thoughts, my vision, how I want something to be done. And then the next 80% of that project getting built out, that process, whatever it is, the team is doing it. So they're incorporating their perspectives into it. And then I would hop in at that last 10% and say, you know what, let's refine this, tweak it, and make sure it's aligned with our company's vision and our values. And so now they have the ownership and the responsibility, because I've gotten myself in trouble to where I build out a cool, robust process with Loom videos and step-by-step and this and that. But then my team members, they don't even want to run it because they're like, this is so extra and different things. And so, versus as you start to release some of that control, your team members have great ideas, right? And so, that's just, again, I went and covered so many different positions, but, that's how I've kind of slowly began to let go of control. And, the reality is that there's low level activities and there's high level activities, right? And so a lot of things, as long as it's documented and processed out well, someone can run that. And, this book Traction talks about it as well, as long as everyone has a scorecard or a number they're responsible of. So for me, if it's an acquisitions person, how many offers are we making? How many leads are we generating a day? How many offers are we making? How many contracts are we getting? Like, those are some big ones. If we're in asset management, what is our collection rate? What is our bill back rate? What is our budget versus actual difference? What's our expense ratio, right? And for construction management, what is our budget versus actual? What is our time to completion? So you start to put these frameworks around roles, so then people know what they need to hit. And so I think that's the big thing, is a lot of people, when they start to delegate and hire something, they just throw it out there, say, go run with this. And then there was little communication, there was little guidance, and then they get mad when it's not done in the way they want it to be. And they're like, what the heck just happened? And so, yeah.
And I'm guilty of that, dude. That exact thing that you just said. Like, I'm totally guilty of that, because I'm running 1,000 miles an hour, and I'm like, dude, you should just get it and do it right.
If you were me, you would understand, right? We think
if you should understand, right?
Yeah.
And so I think as entrepreneurs, like you said, we're control freaks to a degree. We like to control things. No one can do things as good as us, we think, right? And I think that can get us in trouble. And so I'm really wow, dude. I mean, you dropped some gold right now. Let's just end the show now. Let's just end the show now.
Well, I got a little bit more for you. And just to share on that, one thing that I've learned a lot with hiring and screening is, again, it comes back to clarity. But when you know what your company stands for, where you're going, the values you want to live, and how that is incorporated as culture, when you're hiring people, for me, I literally will take them through a kind of our company handbook. Here's our goals, here's our values, here's our meeting cadence, here's everything, so they know what to expect. And so people understand what they're stepping into culture-wise. And beforehand, it was like, oh, this person's a hustler, they have a good resume, let's bring them in. But there was not that vetting as well. And so, hiring and firing is a process that it takes time. And the only way to learn is, for one, learn from other people, but then you have to do it yourself. And, when you have, just the other day, I had my head of asset management, had a situation to where there was something that happened that wasn't aligned with our core values. We hopped on a 35-minute call and I said, hey, these are our values that we live out. And there was two that, we kind of fell up short on. And we talked about it. And he said, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I actually noticed that I kind of fell off on that. And great. So we referenced back to the values that we all committed to. And then he had a chance to either step up and align with that or say, no. And so again, without having those frame references and those values, it's hard to go back to them.
Yeah, dude. That's awesome, and that's just organization at its finest. And a lot of times that we get running, and there's stuff going on. I know the big problem that I had was that we just grew too damn fast.
Yep.
And it was difficult. We were putting fires out all the time. And then before you know, there's 3 more properties closing, and there's 3 more properties closing. Then before you know it, you got 1,000 units and you don't know what
Yep.
Like, it's a mess, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And
so I heard this from Layla Hormozi recently. And because I was looking to bring someone on kind of to sit in a CFO kind of role. Mm-hmm. And she talks about just really almost making it sound worse than it is. Right. And when I brought this team member on, because before, when you grow quickly and you have all these fires in the back and things aren't organized and, you're messing up here and there, a lot of people try to protect that. And that was my pride and ego that I had before. And so then when people would come in, there would be this false expectation of what to expect. And I'm speaking to a small audience here that has grown quickly and experienced this. But so now when I brought on this recent team member, I said, you know what? It's messy. We got to clean it up. And I made it sound so bad. And so as he's coming in, he's like, actually, this isn't as bad as you made it sound. And so now there's that discrepancy to where usually if you're seeing on video, there's this line of what people might expect. And your goal is to stay above this line with the role. But often people come in and they're below the line of what their role might be because it's just worse than kind of how you pictured it. And you want to avoid that. And I've messed up on that a lot. So,
yeah. So now when I hire, I'm like, guys, it's a shit show here, man. It's a disaster.
Yep. Because then they know what to expect,
Yeah. No, that's, and I love that because then, from how I see that is that, that employee is going to come in with those expectations like, hey, I got to perform and I got to turn this thing around. And then they get in, they're like, okay, so this isn't as bad and as daunting. And maybe the person you didn't want runs away because they're whatever about the whole thing. They're like, I don't want to go work for Dylan on that.
Exactly.
Where are you finding your people? Are you like LinkedIn, Indeed, or?
Yes. So previously it's been a lot of ZipRecruiter and Indeed. And, job posts through there. And then recently it's been a bit of LinkedIn as well. But my team's small, right? So I have an acquisition manager and then, in the States, and then I have a asset manager that oversees kind of property management and construction management. Then I have a regional manager that oversees all of our site managers right now. And then of course we have all our vendors and VAs and stuff under that. But then I just brought on someone as more of a fractional CFO role. So that's only 4 people. And, again, we just sold 1 park. So we only have 7 parks right now. And, we're going from just under 500 lots to the next 500. But when you find really good people, they can run with it well.
Yeah. And do you share, I know you mentioned something about equity earlier. Do you share equity? Can you share that if you don't want to?
Yeah, I'm very transparent about that. So with my previous experience, that's what we did because our vision wasn't big enough.
Yeah.
And so now none of my team members have equity. Just because, they have performance bonuses and profit sharing, down the road and stuff like that. But, equity can get messy. And, I've seen some other companies do something to where, maybe after 3 years, they start getting access to 2% and then the following year 4%, and it slowly increases. But for me, I'd rather have it be commission or performance based and, some form of profit share. And that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, agree. Because you're right. Equity can get messy and there's just, it adds a lot of variability. Somebody could have something happen and they blow off and leave. And okay, well, should they really still get that 10%? So it does, It gets hairy.
Well, and it's a double-edged sword because you want to attract great people that can grow with you, but you also don't want to be kind of caught with the bag and get, into some issue down the road. And so there is some balance to it. But, one thing I've learned is that as there's so many people out there, right? It's such a big world. And so as you start to expand your reach, and you've done a great job with this with social media, but as you expand in these different kind of pools, you'll find a lot of people that are fine working W-2, and that's what they want. And so you could find very high performing, even some salespeople with commission, construction managers, property managers, other people that they've just been in these kind of W-2 roles. But as you're maybe only in Facebook groups and only at real estate events, you're finding people that are wanting to own their own business. And so that's what I did previously. Is so those people are wanting equity. They want this cash flow. They want these different things, which there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I'd probably rather appeal to the high performers that are okay with, 9 to 5 in their job.
Yeah, right. Because there are a lot of people that they want the, I guess you could say, the comfort of knowing that they have a paycheck in, but they want to grow, they want to expand. And I think you're right. I mean, those are the best people that we have. I know our office manager, I mean, she's fantastic. She handles so many different things, and she's like that. I mean, she's perfect for that. So that's awesome, dude. I mean, I'm totally impressed with you, and I wish when I was your age that I had it together, but unfortunately I didn't at that point.
Well, once we, invent the time travel, I think we can make more money than Parks, once we get that down.
Yeah, that's true, man. Maybe it already exists. Who knows?
Right.
Who knows? So what, as we kind of shift into another topic here, the market, the Fed just raised rates again. So what are you seeing out there? As far as deals go, banks, like what are you seeing? What's your take on the market?
Yeah, I think as we know, the market's a lot different than it was 12 months, 24 months ago. And so you have to navigate through it. One thing that I've recently done is when you look at any of these big companies, what do? They look over long time horizons, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, previously, we bought a lot of, and we kind of discussed this before, but we bought a lot of heavy value add deals because we're like, we're going to buy this deal. We're going to stabilize within 2 years, return to capital. It's going to be peaches and rainbows, but then you're taking on all this extra workload. It's a lot of, it sucks, right? But when you look at these big guys, they're like, you know what? Let's maybe overpay a little bit for this asset, but it's in a great location. There's high demand, and we don't need our capital back within 3 years. We can wait 5, 7, 10, 15 years. And so that's one thing that I've done now with my performers is I'm looking over a 10-year time horizon to say, you know what? A good deal is going to be a good deal. Is this a market I like? Is this a growing area? Is it an asset that's solid? And then I look at what's the end game. No matter what, there's always going to be 2 Bs involved, a bank or a buyer. Okay. And usually both at the same time. And so you want to focus on deals that banks and buyers will want down the road. And that is going to probably not be in flood zones, good utility infrastructures, solid locations. And so these things that I've bought properties on a wastewater treatment plant, private utilities, in a little bit of a flood zone, smaller towns. And as I've looked at refinancing and selling and different things, it makes it an issue. So first and foremost is look over longer time horizons. Secondly, is a deal's always going to be a good deal, right? When you're looking at, maybe in the first 3 years, it's not going to be a good deal, but 5 years, yeah, I'm fine, with that. And so, our goal is to at least get return of capital within 3 to 5 years, ideally through a refinance event. And, that's it. And so for us, there's, plenty of value add projects that we can do that in. But then also I love creative finance. And so, 4 of the parks on right now are, creative financing. And so I think that's a lot more available. But, the reality is there's going to be a lot of parks that just maybe don't work because if they don't cash flow and you can't get financing. But we just are revisiting on a park, and I look, typically at smaller parks, 50 to probably 150 lots. But we were under contract on this park, I think for like 2.1 this past in December, and it just got brought back to me at 1.3. And, so we're going to find more and more of that happening. And, we're going to be ready. And so just continue to dial in with your relationships with banks, your relationships with investors, and then have multiple, buckets that you're pulling deals from. Right. And so you guys are having your event, it sounds like, on the 3rd to talk about this. And I'm sure you guys will discuss brokers, direct to seller, wholesalers, and, other people in the space. And so just always have lines in the water, always be fishing, always be making offers, always be following up, because things change and we're going to be ready when that happens. And so, our kind of strategy is we're always going to make our discounted, maybe cash price, but then, that opens the door. And then we come back with a second offer of usually creative financing, whether if that is a bank coming in with a 70% acquisition loan and the seller is going to finance the other 30%, or if they will do the full seller financing. And so we're looking at all options. Our performance clearly reflect the inflated interest rates, change in prices, different things, but we're looking over a long enough time horizon at good deals that people are going to want to buy no matter where the market's at.
Yeah, I mean that's great, because and that's what you should do. Like, if you like the fear that's being pushed in the media, like, I don't even know why you watch that junk anyway.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I guess you sort of have to know what's going on, but like, you still have to be doing the things. You still have to be doing the fundamental things that got you to where you are, or what, even if you're just getting into the business, you still got to be making calls. You got to be contacting owners, contacting brokers, wholesalers, just like you said. You have to continue to do this stuff.
Right.
Right. Because the market, like, once you hear from someone else that the market's changed, it's already too late. So it's going to change. If you're in the market, you're going to see it before everyone else. And so and that's great stuff, dude.
Expand. I think people also just need to be okay working hard, right? Like, in reality, sometimes to get the results and the goals you want might take longer and might require more effort, and be okay with that. And so, make sure that you are properly having an output of effort in alignment with the goals that you're trying to achieve. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, as much as I talk about the insurance business wasn't a high leverage kind of industry, but it taught me how to work hard, because I had to work hard to make like a good income. Right. And so like it's in my blood now. Like, it's just the way I operate now. And so you have to build that muscle in some way, shape, or form. And so one thing I always say too is like, hey, if you're in a weird market, tough market, whatever you want to define that as, if you have to take more action to get something done now, when it shifts back to where things are easier again, you're already going to have a runway. You're already going to have a runway, and you're already going to be going, versus the guy who's sitting back in apathy and not doing anything. Like, he's going to have to start the engine again. Yeah. And you're not. Yeah. And so I think it's very important for everybody on this call. If you think, you got to keep calling, you got to be doing all this stuff. And Dylan, you definitely echoed that in what you said. One of the things I wanted to mention on here, so you mentioned the value add deals thing. And I think when you get into this business, at least me, I'm like, dude, I'll do anything.
Yep.
I don't care how dirty the deal is. I'm going to do it. Right. And we ended up doing like 20 of those in 1 year, which is a whole, I've gone into that some, but, once you get, and I was talking to somebody on Twitter the other day that tweeted something, somewhat similar to what we're talking about. After you've been you're in the business, it's like, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah.
Right. Because when you buy that heavy value add deal, yes, you may, you buy it for $1 million, you make it worth $2 million, but that attention could also take you off of something else that you could have gotten. Right. And so I think you would echo that, because we bought wastewater treatment plants.
Yep.
Like,
well, and I love that, Derek, because I think more people need to be transparent about what is really going on in their business. And I've talked to many other large operators, well, not large, but, between that 2,000 to 5,000 range. And, it's painful, because we all go through this season of you don't know what you don't know, you expand your DD list, you have these learning lessons. And, one thing that, we've started to do as well is we just started this, is rolling out kind of like a park rating system. Right. And so when we're looking at these deals, we're kind of taking into consideration the location, the size, the occupancy, condition, economy, diversity, home price, household income, utility infrastructure, price with return, the financing available? Is it located near other parks? And so when we look at these parks, we can kind of start to rate them and say, is this something that we want to take on? And, I've always heard as well is that people are like, oh, well, go look at bigger deals. And I'm like, oh yeah, but they're more competitive. You need to raise more money. It's more management intensive. But in reality, the smaller ones are, because if you're gonna work hard either way, right? And I've always heard people say this, and I'm saying it myself. It's like, but at the end of that, do you want to make $2,000 a month or an extra $12,000 or $20,000 a month? If it's a bigger project, I'd rather do the latter.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we talked about it on the phone. And it's funny because I got sent the deal, and it's got a wastewater treatment plant. It's in a good location. The numbers work out. So I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm going to send this offer, and whatever. It's a lowball offer. And sure enough, the seller's like, okay, well, we'll entertain this. I'm like, Jesus.
After 82 people already passed them the deal, they're like, oh yeah, this Derek guy sounds, good. I think
this Derek guy sounds good. Like, yeah. And so, I guess I'm a glutton for pain. Who knows if we'll actually buy this deal or not. But again, like, this is something that 2 years ago, I would have not even hesitated on. I would have already had it under contract.
Yeah.
Right. Without even thinking.
Yeah. But it's hard, right? And that's where you have to, for me, when I was growing, is I didn't have any other source of income, right? And so you kind of get a little bit of this high of acquisition fees, right? And so you look at a deal and, oh, I've got an acquisition fee. Oh, we need to take this on. And in reality, it's, even though those deals are still good, we'll take care of our investors, we'll make money, like all of that stuff, but you take on things that maybe you wouldn't previously. And so that's kind of my advice for anybody who's either looking to transition into the space or if they're growing, is keep yourself in a good cash position, because when you look at the deal, you can make sure you're doing the right due diligence, but then you're not afraid to say no, right? And, you need to look at things in your bandwidth, your peace of mind, your team's capacity. And as we all hear, the most successful people talk about, you make more money by the things you say no to. And it's true, because as you say no, you open up those doors for the opportunities that you really want to take on, and those high leverage, high value deals. And so, but again, it's just not comparing, because this guy contracted a deal and this guy bought 4 last quarter, and this guy's doing this. But it's like, well, would you rather buy, 3 parks at 25 pads that are maybe not what you want to do, or buy 1 at 75, right? But maybe instead of buying 1 a month, you're buying maybe 1 every quarter or every 6 months. And I think a lot of people, it's just knowing exactly what you want and then being okay saying no if it doesn't meet that requirement.
Yeah. And that's totally true, because, people always ask me, how in the hell were you able to scale so fast? Look, we bought all those value add deals with all that stuff that I said, but we had a specific buy box,
right?
Like, it was pinpointed. And if a deal was even a centimeter outside of that, we didn't even look at it. Yeah. We didn't even look at it. And so we were able to, swiftly act on anything that we saw that fit that buy box, because if it fit that buy box, it was generally misvalued to a degree, right? And so we were able to move on that stuff quickly. So you're right. I mean, you do need to define exactly what kind of deals that you want to buy. Right. And I know, like, I'll do these webinars and stuff, and I talk about this very thing. I'm like, you got to figure out, and it starts with what you talked about, figuring out the end first.
Yep.
And like, why do you talk about this so much? I'm like, it's freaking important.
Yeah.
Like, it's important.
And I'll have a resource by the time this recording launches here. But if you go to my website, relationalcapital.com/cash flow, there's a very simple calculator that I've made and I use that kind of reverse engineers how much cash flow you will actually make on a property. Because so many people, it's not running a pro forma, it's looking at your overall portfolio. And for me, I have the next 20 years mapped out in my portfolio based on if we're buying 500 lots a year. And after you have your investors, your property management, your financing, your expense ratios, some reserves, paying your company, paying your taxes, setting aside for different, expansion, investing in your team, if you're, donating and tithing, how much money are you actually making? And so many people don't do that because they get to 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 lots. Like, I'm not making as much as I thought. But it's like, there's the math out there using wonderful spreadsheets that can kind of reverse engineer a pretty close factor of what you should be making around that. So For me, of course, that all depends on your investor splits, the different returns, debt you get. But I'd be happy to share that with anybody who wants that, because it helps a lot. And then you can see and reverse engineer based on the goals that you want to live in your life.
Yeah, that's super valuable. And people don't think about like when you buy a 50 lot park, you if it's close by, you may be able to handle that one yourself. There's no management fee. But then when you get to 500, when you get to 1,000, you do the math in your head and you're like, okay, we're still going to make this amount of cash flow on this deal. But you don't think about the back office you have to hire. It's a $60,000 job. You have to hire maybe a regional manager. It's another $60,000 a year job. So you don't think about those things. And, from what I've learned in starting with multiple businesses, as you're growing it, like, you're spending more money than you're bringing in, right? To grow that business. And there is a flipping point, but I think we were talking about this on the phone.
Yep. Yeah.
It's like you get to, 1,000 lots, 2,000 lots, and you think that's going to be the holy grail. And you're like, shit, when you get there, there's other things that you didn't expect when you're moving in that direction.
Right.
Staff and things like that, there's another level. Right. So I don't know if it ends. I mean, Amazon doesn't technically make money now. Right.
Right. Which is so funny. And that's exactly where I'm at right now at, these 500 lots, is that, we need to get over to 1,000 plus to make sure that the team's really well taken care of, that there's, healthy cash flow, and then get to that 2,000 and just keep growing, because again, you need to be able to support the team so that they can be running what they're good at, so that you can do what you're good at, whether if that's surfing behind a boat or if it's working hard on podcasts or whatever you're good at and you want to do. But, one thing too, just kind of advice, and I've learned this, I think we discussed this as well, is everybody talks about these management fees, and, they're usually charging a lot less than they should be. And I was talking to another buddy, a well-known name that I won't share, that everybody knows, but they were losing about $50,000 to $100,000 a month in their management company because they weren't properly charging their properties. And so now the GP, the operator, is paying for all this staff that the investors and the properties and the banks are benefiting from, but they're not sharing that burden. So for us right now, we charge an 8%, property management fee for in-house. Mm-hmm. Like I told you on that call, it should be closer to 10, but I see guys that are charging, 6%, 4%, different things. And in reality, it just makes the GP bleed out cash flow when it shouldn't be necessary. And if your deal cannot support 8 to 10% in property management, then again, I mean, if you're okay bleeding out and paying for that yourself, that's fine, but I would prefer the properties to pay for it.
Yeah, because that's like, I mean, that's golden advice right there. And like you said, we were talking about this because you get in, you're like, oh, I'll charge a 5% management fee. But then you realize like that doesn't pay for shit.
No.
And if you're not buying anything and there's no acquisition fees coming in, you're the one paying that. Right. Yep. And so I think you're extremely smart for going to 8%. And I've been underwriting higher numbers in our property management fees because it's necessary with inflation. You can't hire someone good at a low number. You have to pay a quality employee a healthy number.
Right.
And 5% just doesn't do it if you're not buying things monthly.
Yeah. And then to take it to another step, Derek, it's not just supporting that team member, but shoot, small stuff. What do corporations do? They invest in education. Do you have a stand-up desk? How many monitors do you have? Do you have a good Wi-Fi? Are you learning sales? Are you learning more about parks? Are you traveling to this? And so again, that's an extra, however, let's say $100,000 extra a year. If you have a 5 or 10 person team, maybe that's a lot more, but you know what I'm saying, to where you got to invest in the team as well, not just sustain them.
Yeah, no, exactly. And stand-up desks are important. We got it now.
Okay. Yeah. So for you and your listeners, so my wife and I just got walking treadmills. Dude, mm-hmm. I'm addicted to having these walking treadmills under while I'm working. By the time we started this, it was about, 12, 15 here. Yeah. I already walked like 23,000 steps for the day while I've been working. And I'm telling you,
are you going right now? Are you walking right now?
No, I'm not. My head is not on a calibration that just yet.
I was like, damn, you're pretty good at like not swaying there.
No. I had to turn it off for this. But, that's the thing too, is I think so many people, because for me, like we look at values in our company, but also for me in my life, right? It's like my values is eternal impact, quality relationships, unforgettable memories, and time and financial freedom. And so when I look at things, right, and a big portion of kind of that unforgettable experiences is my health, right? And so many people, they sit down at a chair for 8 hours, and even the stand-up is nice, but we don't move our body. And so we can talk about making money. And, Hormozi talks about this is like, and other people talk about this as well, is we will do everything to accomplish success. But then as soon as we lose our health, we are willing to pay everything to get our health back. Right. Yep. And so in reality, it's like, well, if all this is meaningless without our health, why do we not take care of it? And I will go on that tangent forever because it's so much more important than, business and making money. And, there's another pro tip: get yourself a stand-up desk and a walk-in treadmill underneath it.
Yeah. And look, I'll second that. I've been working out every day for 7 years. I get up and get after it every morning. Love it. I'm extremely healthy. I do the Hormozi thing. I never skip dessert, which I never do. Right. But I eat really well, 80% of the time. And I've been doing that for a long time. I don't drink, I don't do anything like that, which is fine. Who cares, if you drink, whatever, but it makes me feel better. I have more energy during the day, and it's so important. And I think some people get it misconstrued because you see, you read books about these ultra successful people and they're not healthy. Yep. Right. A lot of them aren't, unfortunately. A lot of them are too. But I think it's super important to have that well-rounded life, family, health, spirituality, all that stuff is extremely important. Like if you have $1 billion and you're, 150 pounds overweight, you got a crappy relationship with your wife, you can't walk up the steps without going into cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
Is that success?
Yeah. It's so true. Right. And for me, it's like, I would rather talk about this stuff than mobile home parks or real estate because it's so much more important. And for me, I get it. I'm younger. I've only been married for 3 years. I don't have any kids and different things, but it's like, I've seen my parents are divorced. I've watched relationships fall apart. I've watched people die of heart attacks and strokes and cancer and had family pass away from those things. And so it's like, we can go and work our ass off and then come home and our wives hate us because, oh, maybe I'm working for you. It's like, well, why don't you work on being home more for me? Oh, you're missing the kids' games. And, oh, well, kids, I'm doing this for you. It's like, well, I don't care, Dad, if we show up in the Lamborghini or the Chevrolet truck, come on, And so again, it's just, there's so many more things that are important outside of money. And when you have that clarity in place, again, we talk about our buy box for our parks. If that is outside of that buy box, then great. And if that meeting, if that, phone call, if that whatever is outside of your buy box, hey, babe, I'm stopping work at 5. Kids, I'll be home by 5:30, right? You're not going to take that extra call. You're not going to take that extra meeting. And to be honest with you, the investors, the brokers, everybody will have more respect for you because you know what? My boundaries, my family is more important, right? I've changed my voicemail since then, but it used to be, hey, if this is after 6 o'clock, send me a text or I'll get back to you tomorrow. So people knew, you know what? I'm already off. I'm on, even if I'm working, right? I'm already off. They can't get a hold of me. And, look at those things because, and again, I want to talk on this forever because it's so important, and we talk about, oh, well, our marriages are struggling and our health isn't doing this, but it's like, we know we made this person fall in love with us because we were dating them. Right. We were investing in date nights. We were having trips. We were surprising with flowers and love letters and let's get a couples massage and let's do this. But, oh, baby, now I'm working. Now I'm real estate successful. Right. Yeah, I don't have time for that stuff. And so, we have to invest in every area of our life, not just professionally. And it has a higher ROI than our real estate does, I believe.
Yeah, 100%. And I talk about this and I've had people comment on stuff and I'm like, you have to treat, your family life, your health as your business. So think about it's a sort of a business as well, because think about your business. If you don't put that proper attention on it, it's not going to keep growing. The stats are going to crash, financially it's going to crash. It's the same thing with your marriage. It's the same thing with your health. If you don't put attention on it, constant action, constant effort, the same thing is going to happen. Right? Even these little things, like you said, that you were doing to get your wife, you have to keep expanding. It's an expansion thing. You're keeping expanding your business. You have to do that in other aspects of your life too. I think that's, I'm glad we got on this topic because people miss that. And, I think it's, people just don't have that now.
Yeah. And in reality, it's hard, right? It's just, plain hard. I don't have kids, right? And it's still hard. I got my amazing wife and my beautiful golden retriever, and even like spending time with them is hard, And so I can imagine how it is with kids, but it's like, again, just to give some cheesy quotes, it's like anything worth having is going to be difficult, right? Sure. And so that body you want, the marriage you want, the relationship with your kids, the impact in your local community, whatever it is, fill in the blank, it's going to be hard. But in reality, it's just, again, I have my calendar pulled up on my schedule. I plan very well because I want to place those priorities on my schedule. Otherwise, they're not going to get done, right? Yeah. And again, we look back at our weeks. Oh man, I didn't read my Bible. I didn't go to the gym. I didn't have a date night. It's, well, is it on the calendar? Because that podcast was, that meeting was, that submit that offer was. What do you mean?
Yeah, that's it's super important, dude. And I think I'm a full believer. I'm in agreement with you 150%. You have to schedule it. And people just kind of like, oh, I'm not going to schedule my family time. I'm like, you need to schedule. Like, you need to schedule it.
You've heard it here, folks. You need to schedule it.
Yeah, you do. Well, Dylan, dude, I mean, this has been fantastic, dude. We'll have to get you on again and just, shoot it with you here, because this is just valuable information. Because it's easier for you to have a successful mobile home park business. It's easier for you to have a successful business if you have these other areas in line. And all of it's important, and building the discipline to put effort to schedule it in. It makes a world of a difference over time. And so, Dylan, thank you for being with us. Any last words or anything you want to leave anybody with?
That's a dangerous question. I can run for a while. Honestly, Derek, I think one thing that I really just want to leave your listeners with is you need to slow down in your life, right? And this goes for every area. For me, I've noticed massive compounding, just momentum in business, because I've slowed down. And what that means is, first thing in the morning, I will take time to work on my business. And I literally have questions, and I can share some with your listeners here. Is I have a few questions I ask. Is, for one, what can I do to improve love and romance and connection in my marriage? That's the first question I ask myself. Next is, what is the highest value, highest urgency thing I can do today to move my business forward? Third question, what type of business do I need to create in order to live a life of complete and time freedom without the obligation and ability to create unforgettable memories and adventure and spontaneity? Fourth question is, how do we find more deals and more capital? What needs to be done and who do we need? Fifth question is, how can I build up each team member to be a leader and influencer to others? Sixth question is, what do I need to delegate and elevate? Right. So as I slow down in the morning, and I literally have a Word document, and every day I try to answer these 6 questions. And what it does is it gets me spinning. It moves my energy and focus from working in the business to now working on the business, seeing where I can shift to invest in the team members. Where's the friction in the business that needs to be improved? Where am I in relation to my goals? Are we taking the right effort? Are we doing the right accountability? Do we need more meetings? Do we need better metrics? And when you slow down and journal and write and think or read, I'm telling you, you will, and do it consistently, you will have such breakthroughs, because so often we just go and go because we're conditioned for hustle and grind and we're out here working. But, in reality, then we just are living without alignment. And so that's my encouragement, is slow down, ask yourself good questions, because in reality, if we give ourselves enough space to answer these questions, we can probably solve them. And that's the thing, is we don't give ourselves enough space to solve these problems that we're faced with. And we just keep going and we get the same issues. So that's my encouragement to your listeners. And I'm sure you're going to ask, so I'll just say it. You guys can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. My name's Dylan Stewart. My company is Relational Capital. Would be happy to answer any questions you guys have, share some good stories, bad stories. We got them all in mobile home parks or life. And so here to be of value to anybody.
Oh, cool. Well, hey, thanks, Dylan. You've been a beast on this show, man. Like, tons of gold nuggets. Like, I know our listeners have gotten a ton of value of this. So thank you all for watching. We will be back next week on the MHP Show. Peace.